don't know if I could pick a favorite character from The Sopranos. They're all great. Junior is the funniest, Adriana is the most sympathetic, Carmela the most human. Chrissy's struggles with creativity and addiction are relatable to many viewers, and I've always seen Vito as a kind of inversion of the bury your gays trope. His death being framed not as resulting from his queerness, but because he left Johnny Cakes in New Hampshire to come try and live the gangster life, framed as aggressively hetero again in New Jersey. So I won't say Ralph Cifaretto is my favorite necessarily, but I do think he might be the one I most see myself in. Which is a little awkward, because in a strong field, Ralph is also probably the most obnoxious, vile, and generally odious piece of shit on The Sopranos. Utterly tactless and without social graces, violent to women, disrespectful to everybody, and that's not even getting into his taste in movies.
They didn't have flat tops in ancient Rome!
Such being the case, few tears were shed, and indeed many of us were cheering when Tony, ostensibly driven by rage at the destruction of their horse Pyomai, finally beats him to death near the end of the 4th season. However, this line in particular has led many to speculate that Tony's actions weren't to avenge the horse, but to avenge Tracy, the stripper from the Bing that Ralph kills in the previous season.
The poor girl just had her 20th birthday.
It's a nice theory, and it certainly presents our boy quite the knight in the white satin armor, doesn't it? But it's wrong. Now, Tony, master of self-delusion that he is, may have told himself he was killing Ralph for Tracy or Pyomai or whatever, but that doesn't really line up with his actions. For one, he clearly didn't show up there planning to kill Ralph, otherwise he probably would have come with backup or, you know, a gun. To be fair, there is textual evidence backing up the idea that Tony was connecting Pyomai with Tracy, but a lot of it relies on parallels the show is drawing between sex workers employed at the Bing and horses.
I think I want to come home.
There are some non-negotiable conditions.
Like what?
You can't have your horse in here.
The kid's a thoroughbred.
Which is definitely making a point, but it's not one about how Tony heroically murders Ralph for his friend Tracy the horsekin. A major feature of The Sopranos, and an important factor in examining its place in mob cinema, is in how the show never lets us entirely sympathize with any of these guys. There are moments, like when Artie talks Tony out of having that molester coach killed in the 1st season, or when Johnny Sack made sure his wife had a cake on her birthday, even though he was in prison and dying of cancer, where they almost win us over. But then that other shoe always drops. Let's go back to that episode with Tracy. Look how Sil starts off all paternalistic when he's pulling her out of Ralph's house, and see how it turns.
What's the matter with you? Huh? How many girls with kill for the opportunity you got?
What, working for you?
Oh, go ahead. Keep it up.
Give me a break. In 2 seconds, I could get a job at any other...
Listen to me, you little buck. You pay what you owe, that shaved twat of yours belongs to me!
We're never allowed to buy into this Robin Hood, Code of the Omerta bullshit where any of these guys are anything more than thugs and killers. All of them beat women, including Tony himself. He's even killed women. Think about Adriana. Was Tony ordering the death of the singularly most innocent character in the series in a calculated decision to save his own skin really any better than what Ralph did to Tracy? Keep that question in mind while we switch tracks for a moment. Tony is always communicating one thing with his mannerisms and another with his actions. He professes love for animals, but then he works out of a butcher shop, he buys his wife fur coats, he dumps asbestos in a lake where waterfowl are trying to make their home, he's always eating meat.
You gotta help me with these cinch bugs, they're killing my sweet corn.
Well, this blue stuff works pretty well and it's safe for the environment.
I tried that. You got any DDT back there?
So the deal with the DDT thing is it's this pesticide that was used all over the country as a really cost-effective way of destroying insect populations that threatened agricultural production. But the problem is insects affected by the poison would become easy targets for predators, and the chemicals would remain stored in the body tissue of the animals that ate them, becoming more and more concentrated as it moved up the food chain in a process called biomagnification. In particular, this affected large birds that fed from aquatic ecosystems, as it would cause the shells of their eggs to deteriorate until they'd be crushed by the mothers trying to sit on them. This is most famous for having devastated America's bald eagle population, but is also shown to have similar effects on mallard ducks. You know, like the ones Tony supposedly has all this love and concern for.
They eat bread and corn and shit like that.
So you know everything.
Yeah, I do. Family of mallards lived in my pool for 2 fucking months.
Tony claims to be looking out for his family, but don't his actions always bear differently, if you know what I mean? He's a lot like your average YouTuber in that he doesn't care about being a good person so much as being perceived as one. Remember watching too much television when he has those homeless people beaten, shot, and rousted from their only shelter, all to save $7,000 in copper piping? Then at the end of that same episode, he gives Carmela's cousin a $15,000 watch just so he'll validate Tony's delusions about himself.
Tony, great tickets, great meal, great wine, and for being a great guy who I'm proud to call a new friend.
Ralph pointed out his hypocrisy, and that's why Tony killed him. Tony's always looked down on Ralph Cifaretto. You can tell it's very important to him to feel like he's better than Ralph. But is Tony really better? I don't think he is. If anything, I think the show sometimes frames Tony as being specifically worse than Ralph, like when Georgie got clipped by the chain and had to wear a temporary eye patch juxtaposed against the permanent hearing loss he suffered after Tony flies into a rage and beats him unconscious one too many times. All throughout the series, Tony is presented with chance after chance to change, and even though it always seems like he's going to for a little bit, it never quite takes. But Ralph, odious as he was, did start to show personal growth in the end after his son nearly dies in an archery accident.
Would you like to make a confession?
I think I need a little more time, to do a good one. But when I'm ready,
I understand.
thank you.
Let's pray. Have mercy on me, God, in your goodness. In your abundant compassion, blot out my offense. Wash away all my guilt. From my sin, cleanse me, for I know my offense. My sin is always before me.
My friend had a caterpillar on his head. And it turned into a butterfly.
Has your friend recently changed?
Not friend, associate. And no.
This is something that can happen with tragedy, where intense personal suffering can kind of make you a better person, or if not, at least a more empathetic person.
I just didn't understand what you were going through, Ro. I didn't know anything. I was stupid. I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's okay. I mean, there's no way to know what it's like until it happens to you.
A scholarship at Rutgers?
That's right. In Jackie Jr.'s name for $20,000. And it's every year.
Ralph, give me a break.
Notice again the juxtaposition between the recurring scholarship on the one hand and Tony's one-time charitable contribution after he finds out about Gloria Trillo's death.
I'll tell you one thing. One suicide is bad enough, but two? They can both go fuck themselves. I made a donation to the suicide hotline in her name, and that's it.
Learning about Gloria's suicide seemed like such a watershed moment for Tony regarding the way he treats women, but then the very next season he breaks up with Valentina while she's in the burn ward, hopped up on pain medication from injuries she sustained cooking him a snack. Speaking of Valentina, revealing he'd been fucking his ex right after Ralph dissolved into tears over the state of his son has to be some kind of revealing low point for Tony's character, at least up until this point. But then Ralph just doesn't give a fuck. That's the thing about going through real shit, is it puts all the rest of the bullshit in your life that seemed so important into perspective. Think back to how much anxiety Tony had over the idea of having shared a woman with Ralph.
For a guy like that, he's going out with a woman. He could technically not have penitentiary contact with her Volvo. I'm trying to find out about his sex life. And who would know better?
$3,000.
How'd you come up with that figure?
It's a number that I thought you'd say yes to.
You're all right.
After all that, Ralph Cifaretto was the bigger man, and Tony was shamed by it.
I don't hear you complaining when I bring you a nice fat envelope. You don't give a shit where that comes from. Don't give me that look. It was a fucking horse. What are you, a vegetarian? You eat beef and sausage by the fucking carload.
Meat has always been a psychological trigger for Tony, so having Ralph Cifaretto, of all people, call him out as a hypocrite and phrasing it like that was too much. Then once he swung, it was too late to do anything else. They'd almost killed each other after the last time Tony hit Ralph, so this time he made sure to finish it. I guess the only lingering question is who burned down the barn. I kinda get a kick out of the idea that Paulie did it as payback for the prank phone call Ralph made to his mother.
We had to have emergency surgery performed upon arrival at headquarters after discovery of a small rodent in the rectal passage.
Oh my God.
I know it was that miserable prick called Myra at the home. They had to put her on Xanax just so she could sleep. She was in the hospital unit for an hour and a half with nervous bowel syndrome.
But what makes me think it was Ralph is this shot at the burned out barn where the goat turns and looks directly into the camera. This kind of gets into what Ralph Cifaretto represents within The Sopranos, in the abstract sense.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Were you there when Jesus Christ had his moment of doubt and pain?
Put his kids in a hospital. Little fucking sympathy, huh?
Get it?
Satan did his kid.
I think my favorite clue comes in No Show when Janice is reading a book called The Origins of Satan and she gets hit in the eye by one of Ralph's toenails.
Huh. What? You catch some shrapnel?
I see this as the show telling us, yeah, Ralphie went through some positive changes, but ultimately the devil is still a devil, and it's like the song says. Have some courtesy, and some sympathy, and some taste. Tony did not use his well-learned polities, and you know the rest. Thank you for watching, everyone. Before we go, I want to take a quick moment to address my patrons, some of whom have changed tiers recently and may not have been able to claim benefits. That's just because I haven't actually charged for anything since that Joker video in November, so the next long-form video I do, you'll be billed for, and then the tiers will update and such. If you'd like to become a patron and ask me questions or be thanked in my videos, you can do so by visiting patreon.com/wormshole or following the link in the description. If 4 more people back me, I'll upload a growing compilation of deleted scenes and extras, including a delightful little segment from today's video where I analyzed Tony's blowjob face. Finally, I do want to thank everyone who corrected my mispronunciation of one of the names in my last video. It's actually pronounced Salezo. Thank you again. I've never actually seen The Godfather because it's a stupid movie about people with absurd names.